Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in again as we continue our discussion of free will. And in this video, I am going to be going over one of the more popular arguments for incompatibilism. So just remember, incompatibilism is the position that it can't be the case that our actions are free and determined. It can't be the case that I act freely if all of my actions are necessitated by things which exist prior to those actions. And this argument is called the consequence argument, or the consequence argument for incompatibilism. But before we actually get into the argument itself, a really important point needs to be made here, and that is this. It is that the consequence argument is only an argument against compatibilism. So the only aim of the consequence argument is to show that if determinism is true, none of us have free will. That's the only thing that the argument is trying to show. It is not an argument that determinism is actually false. It is also not an argument that we actually have free will. So the consequence argument is an argument that both a hard determinist and a libertarian could use against compatibilism. So we're not trying to say that determinism is false with this argument. We're also not trying to say that we actually have free will. That's a really important point. Okay, and crucial to this argument is the notion of control, or the idea that I myself have to be the cause of my actions in order for those actions to be free. So libertarians in particular here will make a distinction between what's called event causation and agent causation. So event causation is just when we have a series of events lined up together, and one event causes another event, that event causes another event, that event causes another event. So here's one example that's used. If you think about raising your hand, it seems that you're doing something, namely, you're raising your hand. Somebody asks you a question, or you want to stretch or something like that. There's a reason behind what you're doing. But if we were to ask, what caused you to raise your hand? It seems the answer would be, well, I did. I am the cause of my hand going up. Now, but clearly, in the process of raising my hand, a lot of things are happening. There's stuff going on in my brain, which is causing my heart to pump blood. There's muscle movements, and there's, communication between neural pathways and things like this. So, is it the case that my raising my hand is just an instance of all of these different events, brain events and circulatory events and muscle events, producing an outcome? Or is it me, the agent, the one that is making these various things happen in the action of my raising my hand? So a determinist would say, well, it's event causation. It's just one thing. Events in the brain produce muscle movements. Those muscle movements produce, locomotion and things like this. A libertarian who holds to agent causation, or, this notion of what's also called sourcehood, would say, no, I need to be the one that is raising my hand, even though in the process of raising my hand, I am also making other things happen. So, in this argument, when we talk about the notion of control, that's what we mean. In order for my actions to be free, I have to be the self determiner of those actions. I could potentially be influenced by things over which I exercise no control, because that, let's face it, every single one of us is influenced on a daily basis by things that are not within our control, that we don't self determine. There's interesting questions in the literature about, okay, how influenced do you have to be by desires and environmental factors and things like that to lose control? That's an actually really interesting question in the literature. But despite those influences, it can't be the case that something is determining the event or the action that's going to take place. So that's the notion of control that we are working with here. Okay, so premise one, I have no control over the past. So this guy, our little skeleton friend here, uh, is dead. That person no longer exists, and there's nothing we can do about it. right? So none of us have any control over the past. None of us have, through our actions, can determine how the past is. It's also true that I have no control over the laws of nature. The laws of nature existed long before you or I or any other human mind did, and there's nothing that we can do to change the laws of nature. And if there really are laws of nature, they would be exceptionless. So, airplanes taking off from the ground and rockets going into outer space, these are not exceptions to laws of gravity. These things only happen because of gravity. So if there are natural laws, they would be exceptionless. Okay? Premise 3. If determinism is true, these things, the conjunction of the laws of nature and the relevant past, everything leading up to this very moment, on determinism, these things necessitate a unique future, F. So, what do we mean by a unique future? What we mean is that how the future is going to be is completely necessitated by the relevant laws of nature and the relevant past events. So, that means on determinism, the future is going to be closed. However, if I have no control, oh, I'm sorry. I also have no control over the fact that this necessitation holds. I have no control over the fact that the laws of nature conjoined with the relevant past necessitate a unique future F. That's also something I have no control over. So, therefore, 5, if determinism is true, I have no control over how the future is. That's not up to me how the future is. Now, the reason why this is crucial is because there's a relationship here between me having some control over how the future is going to be with my being the self-determiner of my actions. So, in order for my actions to be self-determined or for me to be the relevant cause of those actions, remember that it can't just be a series of conjunctive events that lead to an inevitable outcome. So, if we're thinking about it in terms of a chain, with determinism, if you get several links in a chain, it's inevitable what the other link is going to be. For the libertarian, even given everything leading up to my action, it still needs to be open to me to do something else. And I am the one, as the agent or the determiner, I am the one who has to be the explanation for why the future is the way that it is. So prior to my saying I do on my wedding day, the fact of the matter of, so I got married on June 23rd, 2006. Now, in order for it to be true on June 24th, 2006, that the day before I freely married my wife, how that future fact is, the fact that I freely married my wife, in order for that to be true on June 24th, 2006, I have to be the determiner on June 23rd, 2006. So, in order for my actions to be free, how the future is going to be has to be up to me in some relevant sense. But if determinism is true, the future is not at all up to me. I can't determine or cause it to be the case that any fact about the future is actually true. And if I have no control over the future, my actions are not free. Therefore, if determinism is true, my actions are not free. So let's re-summarize this argument. Okay, so again, I have no control over the past events. E. I have no control over the laws of nature. N. If determinism is true, the laws of nature, conjoined with the relevant past, necessitate a unique future. So N plus E necessitates a unique future F. And I have no control over the fact that this necessitation holds. I have no control over the fact that N plus E necessitates F. Therefore, if determinism is true, I have no control over how the future is. And if I have no control over how the future is, if I have no control over F, if how the future is not at all up to me, my actions are not free. Therefore, if determinism is true, my actions are not free. So once again, this is a very simple argument, and if this argument works, it shows that it can't be the case that my actions are both free and determined. So if determinism is true, my actions are not free, and hence incompatibilism would be true. All right, simple argument, right? Now, obviously, compatibilists will have a response to this as well. So every incompatibilist finds some version of this argument compelling. Compatibilists clearly won't find this kind of argument compelling. So in the next video, I will go over a quick way of responding to this argument if you are a compatibilist. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll see you next time.